Hi, this is Russell Glasser, host of The Atheist Experience. You know, The Atheist Experience is made possible by volunteers and the generous support of viewers like you. If the promotion of positive atheist culture and separation of church and state are values that you hold, please consider contributing by becoming an ACA member or visiting our product page at evolvefish.com under the Partner tab. Thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Atheist Experience. This show is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization for the promotion of positive atheism and the separation of church and state. I'm your interim host, Jeff Dee. With me is our interim co-host, Joe Zamecki. Hi, Joe.
Howdy.
Joe and I go way, way, way back to the early days of the Atheist Community of Austin. Not technically the very first day. Were you there before me? I think you were.
I believe.
Yeah.
I was first couple of meetings.
Yeah. So and it was actually Joe's perseverance that is the reason why the ACA has a TV show at all. So good work. How you doing?
Great. Feeling good.
Yeah.
Nice warm day out.
Yes. Nice Texas weather. This is a live call-in show, usually broadcast from the public access studio in Austin, Texas, but this is a special episode streaming from the ACA's Freethought Library in Austin, Texas. Today, we're taking calls only via Skype. Just chat to the crew at The Atheist Experience on Skype, no spaces, and they'll get you set up. Want to give a shout out to our studio audience and our intended co-host Martin Wagner, who has just walked in the door. Somebody will let me know if that has to change anything. After today's show, we'll be gathering at the Thunderbird Cafe at 1401 West Koenig Lane. And let's begin. I understand we have some calls already on the line, and I have no idea who they are. So let's have the first one. And we're waiting for that first call. So what have you been up to, Joe?
Hanging around in Austin. Just love this city.
You had left Austin. You've got a whole history, right? You had left Austin chasing after the American Atheists.
Sure.
Shouldn't put it that way, but they left Austin, went out to the East Coast. You went out there with them, worked for them for a while.
Yep.
And you've been in, was it Houston?
Yes, I
things?
lived in Houston for a year and a half and just moved back last year.
Doing your own writing and videos and stuff. They're all over the internet. Anything you want to plug?
Oh, yes, I wrote a couple of books. And
Well, what's the most recent one? Let's do that one first.
the latest one, Atheist Activist Tales from the Trenches of the Freethought Movement. And we actually have a copy back there, but that's available on Amazon.com.
Cool. Then that covers your adventures as an activist atheist?
Many years of them. Of course,
Yeah.
I'm continuing now, but I spent 8 years fully employed with American Atheists, and I did a whole lot of other things for the movement, involved with them and other groups, and I wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Joe's done an amazing amount of stuff, so thanks, Joe. I think we can take that call
I
now.
spent 8 years fully employed with American Atheists.
Hello?
Hi, caller. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. What's your name?
Josh.
Josh. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. What do you got for
Thank you.
us?
Well, I first like to say, thanks for doing the show. I love your work, but some of the hosts on the show, and I'm told you too, Jeff, think science cannot work on the supernatural. Now, I'd like to say first, I'm a strong atheist. I'm a materialist. I don't think there is the supernatural, but I think it's also wrong to say science cannot work on the supernatural if it existed.
Well, just to clarify, my opinion is actually that when people talk about supernatural things, they've given themselves license to define those things in such a way that they are not open to scientific inquiry. Not all of them. Obviously, there are all kinds of supernatural claims that could be tested. But, God is the big obvious example, right? That of a thing that's defined in such a way that it's really hard to bring science to bear on it.
Well, I mean, some gods, I completely agree, but, like, the Christian God, I think the evidence is pretty good. And unfortunately, I think I might need to call back when, like, Matt is on. I don't think we're going to have much of a disagreement.
Okay.
I'm sorry, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, see ya.
And I have no idea if we have another call. This is a brand new, first time broadcasting from the studio. Of course, I'm here first and third Wednesdays of every month with Russell Glasser and Dennis Loubet in this very same room recording the Nonprofits audio podcast. And and we use some of the same equipment. But we don't take calls on that. This is all new and exciting. Do we have another call? Yes. Let's go to the next call. Hi, caller. Can you hear me? They're working on it. I brought with me this binder of stuff that I accumulated over many years of doing the audio the TV show. And it's been a while since I've been on this show. I hosted it for a 2-3 year period just before Matt took over, and all kinds of fun things that have been brought to the show over the years. Like, do you remember the little girl who tested therapeutic touch?
Vaguely.
And that was a big news story. We got that in here. Some amusing credentials on various creationists. I don't really want to read all this. We got the death toll article. I've read this on the TV show. All of the people and cities destroyed by God or at His command, compiled actually by a bunch of Satanists online. That's where I got this. It was fun. And the total is more than 399,933 people killed personally by God in the Bible. I don't want to read this whole thing, but that's just going by the specific numbers listed and not including, say, the entire population of the world at the time of the flood.
Which could have been a great deal more people than that.
It certainly could, but the Bible doesn't say how many they're claiming.
Well, they wouldn't be able to count that back then, right?
And over 2 million people, specific numbers given, people killed at God's command by human beings.
Okay.
Any interesting encounters with Christians you want to talk about? Anything you feel sometime here?
I didn't come prepared.
I know. Well, Joe is sitting in here on short notice. That's all right. Jump in. Say whatever comes into your head when you have something. I had an encounter the other day. It was the nicest encounter with a Christian I've ever had. My air conditioning broke down. And the guy who showed up to fix it did a fine job and then said, I gotta ask, are you the Jeff Dee from the Atheist TV show? And I said, well, yeah. And we started talking, and he had questions about, what Matt was up to and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, it's always nice to meet other atheists and fans of the show. And he says, well, actually, I'm a Christian. Mm-hmm. Apparently, one of our many Christian viewers who loves to watch this show. And we had a nice chat, and he brought up all of the obvious, apologetic arguments that we've heard and shot down a million times, and I was appalled that he could be a regular viewer of the show and not know what our answers were going to be to these things. But he was nice about it, and we went away on good terms. We can take that next call now. It's Noah. Noah, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hi Noah. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Batavia, Illinois.
Okay. What do you got?
So I wanted to, so first of all, I wanted to welcome you back to the show. I've watched you a lot on the show.
Thanks.
In the past on YouTube. But I wanted to ask your opinion on kind of like cognitive dissonance, or how people shield their theistic beliefs from
I'm against it.
What'd you say?
I'm against it.
Oh, you're against it?
Yeah, I'm against cognitive dissonance, but go ahead.
That's a short answer. It's more like specific because I work in the sciences, And, even though, of course, there's a majority of people in the sciences I would say are atheists, I still do know a good number of people who believe in God, and they kind of, they have this idea that they can, work in science and, be rational and look for evidence, but then they completely just move God off to the side and don't apply that same kind of thinking, and I don't understand it. And when you talk to them about that and you tell them that that's what they're doing, they say that they just don't have a reason.
Okay.
Well,
I mean,
that he support it.
I think you got to remember that their notion of God is a personal, very intricately defined thing in their heads, and it's imaginary, so it can fit any criteria they want. And if they want it to be a thing that's not going to interfere when they're doing science, then that's what they imagine it to be. It's not fair, but I think that goes on a lot. Joe?
I've had kind of an analogy that I bring up once in a while when talking about cognitive dissonance. A lot of people will go to church every Sunday and devote their afterlife to one particular religion, one particular denomination, one particular church, one particular preacher, one particular way to do that within that structure. And then if somebody wants to put aluminum siding on their house, well, they want to see references, and they want to do a credit check and a background check. They want to see past work. Why? Because that's what's important to them, their place where they live, where their family lives, and not so much their soul. It's kind of a gamble with the soul part, but also every day they have to live in that house, but every day they don't have to deal with their soul or a God. If they did have a God in their face every day, it would be a much more important topic, and they would, first of all, demand some more valid proof of that God in the first place, but everything else should be on the same level of criteria.
You'd think. Hey, I need to let the control room know that we are getting a lot of subtle background noise.
Yeah, I can hear that too.
We're still hearing like an advertising or something. Okay. All right.
Sorry about that.
They're dealing with it as best they can.
All right, so that was basically it. But I also wanted to say that the quality of video is much better, and so is the sound. So good job to everyone.
Really? Well, that's great. Kudos to the folks in the control room. This is the first time we've really attempted this, so they've been working really, really hard to make everything work. Thanks for your call, Noah.
Bye.
This reminds me, I'm a fan of the superheroes genre, and I was watching this series on Netflix called Young Justice, which is like a team with Robin and Kid Flash and Superboy and these like young superheroes, right? And they did an episode where they were helping out this character, Dr. Fate, and Dr. Fate is a magical superhero, superpowers character, and Kid Flash is all like science-y. And I was appalled that they took this opportunity to denigrate scientific skepticism in this episode, because it was like all Dr. Fate giving Kid Flash a hard time for not believing things that don't fit within your narrow bounds of science. Which is ridiculous, because this is a fake universe where magic does exist because there's superheroes, right? To use that as an opportunity to go after scientific skepticism bugged the heck out of me. All right. Well, let's do something else then. Have we another call?
Yes.
I guess we'll know. We have another call. It's
Zephram.
Zephram. Hi, Zephram. Can you hear me? Zephram, are you there? We're not hearing Zephram. Okay. All right, Zephram appears to be gone. Yeah, so I personally enjoy mystical, supernatural, magical things when they're safely in the realm of entertainment, right? Totally cool with stories about that. I think Christianity's greatest contribution to civilization has been as a backstory to a lot of horror movies. Very effective horror. Vampires wouldn't work without Christianity, right? I'm okay with it on that level, but to use that, to take advantage of that, and then try to spread a superstition belief system was over the line. What could we do? Now I've got so much stuff, I don't know where to start. Do you remember there was I think I have this over here. There was a thing I reported on, here it is. This goes back to 2000, I think. And we reported on a outfit called Therapon Christian Counseling. This is Christian psychological therapy. And what they did is they abused the concept of rational. There we go. We got Zephram back.
Hello?
Hi, Zephram. Yeah, hi.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Great. Yourself? Where are you calling from?
Frisco.
Frisco. Okay. What can we do for you, Zephram?
So I was just curious, I know because of the burden of proof it's not all that necessary, but I was curious what you think the greatest evidence against religion coming from a psychological or scientific standpoint would be.
The greatest? Well, that depends on what the specific claim is, right?
Right.
So there's no one monolithic claim of religion, right?
Oh yeah, I know. I just mean
religion's a thing. I mean, give me a particular religion and a particular formulation of that religion and a particular definition of the God, and then we can start picking it apart.
let's take Christianity for example.
Okay. Which kind of Christian God? Because there's a whole bunch of them too.
Yeah. One for each one of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much experience I have on the different personal gods or different gods from different branches of Christianity, but
Well, some of them can be shot down really easily by the problem of evil, right?
that's true.
If it's a three omnis God, that there's no such thing, right? I mean, they can retreat
Exactly.
to crazy arguments about how certain terrible things are in fact good, and a lot of them do retreat there, but not all of them are gonna present their God as three omnis.
But that's and I totally agree with that, but that's from a more philosophic perspective.
Yeah.
And
You were
when it
asking
comes to
psychologically.
that, they like to ignore it. They like to ignore the problems that exist with their gods. So,
Well, sure, of course they do.
yeah, I know. But it's more difficult to ignore evidence, but it's also very difficult to get any on the
Well, right.
God
You
claims,
need
'cause of
you
course
need
it's-
to have evidence against a God. It's like, this gets to the question of is absence of evidence evidence of absence? And actually, it can be, as long as the presence of a thing leads automatically and undeniably to certain kinds of evidence. And when you look and it's not there, that is actually evidence of the absence of the thing that there should be evidence for, and there isn't.
Yes.
Did you have more on this?
Psychologically speaking, yes, I think people have an innate primal need to believe certain things. Like, first of all, that the most important thing in the universe is me. That's self-preservation. And it is, I think, something that's born into us genetically because of natural selection. Those who thousands of years ago didn't care too much about their own needs first didn't make it long enough to pass on their genes. But nowadays it's a little different, but still people have fear and suspicion about the universe around them, and they need a psychological security blanket. Many people do still. And it's, I think, totally natural, but that people get psychologically desperate and want to grab onto something that seems to be very reassuring, even if it's not really tangible. And in this day and age, we can replace that with things that are real and a way to make sure of that. But the old ways are still very based on primitive psychological needs that humans have, and probably always will, I think.
Yeah. Anything else, Zephram?
No,
Follow
that's
up on
about
that?
it. I was just curious if there are any names for those kind of things, the
Names?
psychological aspect.
Oh.
The name of the psychological need for that.
You have that, Joe?
A security blanket
Okay.
paradigm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Zephram.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
You are welcome. Thanks for calling. And that's great to hear that the sound and video quality is going out there at high quality. So yay! Once again, good going to the engineers. Right. So I was talking about this thing. These Christian psychiatry people. I'm not sure exactly what the correct term is. We're abusing this actual thing called rational something therapy. Anyway, they were taking a real thing in psychology, which says you should be believing true things and not believing false things, and then bringing Christianity into the mix and saying, well, obviously Christianity is true, so if you're not Christian, you're nuts.
See,
I wonder what happened to these people.
One would think that would be actually wise if they're already in that mindset. So to bring something totally alien to them, like there's no God, that might shock them a little at that time.
Uh-huh.
That I wouldn't really agree to continue deceiving people, but if somebody needs to be treated gently, like maybe that's...
Yeah, I might be okay with it as if it was merely, oh, this patient is Christian, so we're going to treat them with an understanding that is their worldview. But these guys are going much further.
Yeah.
They were essentially defining anything non-Christian as nuts. So, and that was a fun story. I remember doing that on the show. We have Joseph on the line. Joseph, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Joseph. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Nashville.
Nashville.
Yes.
How's it in Nashville today?
Oh, it's okay. It's a little warm.
Uh-huh. Well, you're calling folks in Texas, so we're right there with you. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm an atheist, and every time I debate a theist, I'm always they're always telling me that was the old covenant, and I keep telling them that they're cherry picking. But
you're talking about Old Testament stuff?
Well, old covenant, I should say.
Okay.
They always say that's old covenant, not the new covenant.
Well, what specifically is Old Covenant and not New Covenant?
Well, that's what I ask them, and everyone I've asked comes up with different answers. Some say, "Oh, it's more of the spiritual type thing and not the physical," and I was just trying to find out, what I could do with that. It's hard to say based upon their variations of what they consider the old.
Joe, what would you recommend?
They're not referring to the Old Testament and the New Testament? That's usually the context, isn't it?
No, they're actually saying certain things in the New Testament in the New Testament is still considered the Old Testament.
Because we're now
living.
Because in the modern time we're now living in the New Covenant, so to speak.
Yes.
I can see how that would be mostly spiritual instead of physical, because we can now detect things that are physical. And if we can't detect God, then the whole spiel has to change. Instead of saying there's a God all around us, it has to go from being that to we're spiritual. And you just have to leave it at that. And of course, I think atheists are just people who expect results from religion.
I would agree.
Yeah, the whole idea of a covenant changing, like it seems on a very shallow level, it seems reasonable that, okay, so the God can change the deal. But you got to remember, this is an entity who, if for most of his believers, is viewed as a guy who doesn't change. So why would the rules be changing? And on top of that, he's supposed to have had this plan in place since the beginning. So why would there be a change in rules if it's all according to his plan in the first place? Right? It seems to me like an admission that the God screwed up somewhere. if he's got to be changing the rules.
Right, and I would agree. On that particular note, I'm constantly told, well, that was with the old times, and he had to explain it in a way that they would understand that he didn't mess up. It was just he was trying to convince the older people.
But that is messing up. If the God didn't know that his if the God wasn't able to make people understand the things that were true and important, then lying to them or spinning a fairy tale for them is not really an answer. The correct answer would be improve their intelligence and educate them.
Right.
Which you don't see any evidence of in the Bible at all.
No.
Me personally, I don't like to argue with Christians on the issue of the Bible, because as far as I'm concerned, they need to show me there's some reason to take the thing seriously in the first place before I'll get down in there with them and argue over what this and that in the book means. I honestly don't care until they give me a reason to care, and they haven't done that yet.
Yeah,
But-
I sort of, I don't know if I made a mistake, but I came out as an atheist right before Thanksgiving of last year,
Yeah.
even though I've been an atheist since '85.
Yeah.
So, now I'm starting to get a lot of debating going back and forth, even with family, friends, etc.
Yeah. Well.
And so,
Yeah, well, it's your situation. You have to decide what your comfort level is and how much you want to actually wrangle over these issues.
right.
It can be very fun, but yeah, be careful. A lot of folks who believe these things take it very close to heart, and I've been in situations where in a debate I'm just being very careful, and I'm coming real close to the line when we say certain things in critique of their beliefs, and sometimes they just get a little riled by that. And I understand. But if it's that important, they should do what we do. Say where. And if you don't get a good answer to that question, don't just keep believing and going back. Continue asking, searching, finding out for sure. That's how we prioritize, to explore and find out what is really important. And I think the most important things in life will make themselves abundantly clear and obvious. Like the people around us, our needs, tangible needs, but not a God. We can't find a God. I mean, if there's millions of people who can't find it, how important can it be? And if it's supposed to be everywhere, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll take that. I'll take into that consideration.
Okay. Thanks for your call, Joseph.
Okay.
You hang in there, man.
All right. Thanks.
When I was having that conversation with the Christian air conditioning guy, the conversation was going well. Where it was polite and there was no yelling or denigration or anything going on. He didn't bring up hell, which is I always consider a plus. And he goes, and I said, the atheists, we really don't mind if you want to believe whatever it is you want to believe. We wouldn't be having an argument if people on your side of the fence weren't trying to impose the requirement of belief and the stuff you believe in on the rest of us, right? And that's why we don't want the public schools being used, for example, to indoctrinate. And I pointed out to him, the response from certain people on his side when we try to get religion out of schools is that, well, if you don't have religion in schools, then you have atheism in schools. But no, when you're working on an air conditioner and you're sitting there, fixing parts and measuring electrical impulses and refilling Freon tanks and stuff, and not thinking about or talking about Jesus, you're not being an atheist. That's not what atheism is, okay? That's just you're not doing religion at the moment. And he seemed to be able to grasp that a little bit.
I know a lot of Christians say, I'm so glad that not everybody does religion all the time.
Yeah.
What a crazy place it would be.
Well, there are places in the world where they do a particular religion all the time, and we don't want that.
Crazy places.
Yeah.
That's a little rough.
Can you believe this? Here, going back to 1999, I've got an article here. Dan Barker posted this. You know what's great looking back at some of this really old stuff that we covered on the show is realizing how unnecessary a lot of it seems now, but was then. That feels like progress. This is a whole article posted by Dan Barker about a sociology study which found that Christians are no more moral than non-Christians. I don't even hear that argument come up anymore. Not really, you know. It's even like the well, where do you get your morality from thing has gotten a lot more subdued. It comes up occasionally, but it's not like the big central thing anymore.
Well, in addition to being a very weak argument in the first place, our movement has responded. And they've heard on TV, they've heard on CNN and Fox News. We have done a great job as a movement in letting our views be known, and that one was really easy to answer, I think.
As far as I can tell, we do not have any callers right now, so those of you who have tuned in might want to get on Skype, look up The Atheist Experience, no spaces, and chat to the crew at that address on Skype, and they will get you set up to talk to us on the show. What else can we do to fill some time? I'll put in a plug for the Nonprofits audio show. It's myself, Russell Glasser, Dennis Loubet, right here in this room from this very building. First and third Wednesday of every month. I believe we have an episode coming up this coming Wednesday. And that is more of a round table, me and Russell and Dennis talking to one another. We have Thaddeus on the line. Thaddeus, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi. We're good. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Calling from Springfield, Missouri.
Springfield, Missouri. Welcome.
Sure.
What do you got for us, Thaddeus?
I have a very good friend that I have argued with for the past year or so, ever since I relinquished my faith of Christianity.
Yeah.
I'm now currently an atheist. And this is the one question that I have yet to answer from this person. And she asked me how evolution can explain organ dependency, i.e., if humans need both a heart and a brain, and they can't just have one or the other. And she's asking, did they evolve at the same time? Did they evolve separately? And my explanation to her was, well, somewhere down the line, one of our ancestors had one of those things, and then eventually it evolved to have another, and they became codependent on each other.
Oh, okay. Do you want to take this first, or?
I'm not into science, but I would say it happened very slowly. I know that much. Very
that's
gradual.
That's why I tried to explain that it was over a course of hundreds of millions of years, and she doesn't seem to understand that. Like
the thing is, if you look back at primitive organisms, you don't find like here's a planarian worm, and like this earlier version didn't have any neurons. And then the next version had a brain. It had the ancestry of the brain is simpler and simpler and simpler, smaller, less centrally important versions of the thing that eventually became the brain, right? So these are just systems that evolved in creatures because they needed to do certain jobs, and the earliest creatures didn't need brains. They didn't have them, right?
Well, they have the nucleus, which is like...
The nucleus is not a brain.
Well, it's like the commander of the organs in a cell.
Well, yeah, but that's a nucleus is a thing in a single cell. We're talking about organisms that are multiple cells, right? And as individual cells in a multicellular creature, by evolution, some were better at certain kinds of tasks than others. That became standard for those creatures, and then in further generations, those cells or clusters of cells became better and better through evolution at doing the thing that they were specially purposed for.
Yeah,
right?
She also had and tied to that question, which came first, the brain or the heart. I told her the brain, because I just assumed that since the heart is a blood pumping muscle and our ancestors didn't have.
There's a point before which there isn't even a heart, and you get to simple multicellular creatures. There's a means of moving some fluids around in these simple creatures that we wouldn't necessarily call a heart. It's the ancestor of the heart. I mean, all these things evolved from cells that were by just normal variation, as many generations of these things were born and died. Individual cells would be better at certain kinds of things, and the ones that had tendencies to produce cells that would have functions that were slightly advantageous, the development of those cells would become more and more common in later generations of that thing, and then they would continue to develop because of the advantage of having specialized cells to do those jobs. And when you go from simple worms to human beings, you're looking at vast amounts of evolutionary time, and we're the end point of that development. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then she also asked, if the ancestors at some point did not have a brain, then what gave them the instinct to reproduce and carry on their genetic information?
A cell that has a biological clock in it that simply does a thing at a certain time in its development, that's not a brain, but it's still doing that thing.
Okay, yeah.
You do not need a brain necessarily to do everything.
Right, there are some animals that don't have a heart or a brain.
Right.
To me, that would counter the argument that you have to have one or the other. And can't.
Well, she was talking about humans specifically, which I said.
In any case, you're talking to a couple of non-scientists here, right? We're telling you what we understand of evolution, but really,
yeah, I'm aware of that,
there are people.
Take my Skype call.
There are people who study this stuff and understand it in much greater rigor than we do, and the fact that there are those people that have gone to school and learned and become educated and studied these things, and they are not compelled at all by this woman's arguments, means there's stuff going on that she just doesn't understand.
Well, I was trying to explain it to her. I mean, I know the answer's out there. I just could not find a good enough one, that I could explain thoroughly. I get it. Like, something in the back of my head helps me understand it, but I didn't know how to, put it into words. Now, I have another question. Now, less of a question, more like this commentary on a moral precept of the Bible.
Uh-huh.
I can't, I've watched the show for maybe 5 years
Just
now.
a moment. Again, control room, we are getting, it sounds like World War II is going on in our headphones.
We think that's your caller, but...
Okay. Do you have some kind of
drumming?
War movie or drumming or something
Sounds like
going
a
on
drum
your
solo.
phone?
Call it.
Thaddeus?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Did you have some background noises going on? Because we were hearing it. You typing or something, maybe?
My room is entirely quiet. Aside from a fan, I have a fan.
All right. This is a new adventure for us here. We've never broadcast from this room before. All right. So you go on with your question.
Okay, it's more of a commentary on a moral precept that I haven't seen anybody ever address. Slavery is very sanctioned in the Bible. It's explicit how you can go about buying and treating your slaves in the Bible. And then a lot of people will argue, well, they were supposed to treat them nicely. They were supposed to treat with moral indentured servitude. And while that argument falls over on itself most of the time when Matt Dillahunty is talking to them, and he explains that, I found a passage in the Bible sometime back that I think really hammers home that slaves were not people; they were property. In Judges 19:22 through 29, I believe it is, there is an incident where these mob members who are drunk attack this man's home and demand that he give up to them the guest he had in his house so that they could have sex with him, so they could rape him. And the homeowner said, "No, don't do that. That's bad. Instead, you can take my daughter." And then the man protests and he says, "No, don't give up your daughter lest ye be fined. Instead, take my concubine." Okay, so we have three hierarchies here. We have the man, the stranger, who was automatically more valuable than the man's daughter. And then he says, lest ye be fine, which implied that, okay, if you give up your daughter, she's going to lose her bride price. She's going to lose the value she has to you. And then instead they gave the concubine up. And once they gave the concubine up, she was raped, and then she died the next morning. And then he cut her up into 12 pieces and sent her out to Israel, which is heinous in and of itself. But that just goes to show that the concubines and the slaves were not people. There was no...
Even if they were, it's almost worse if they are people, because then you're recognizing that these are other human beings, and you're still claiming to own them as property.
I'm not saying that they weren't people. They were, but they weren't treated as such. They weren't thought of as such. And there was no kindness. There was no how you can say benevolence behind the institution that they had going. If I had to say, I would.
Even if there was, I guess, is the point I'm saying. Even if there was, is slavery okay as long as you treat your slaves nice? No,
not at all.
No, you can't own another human being as property. Now we understand this now because we're socially more advanced than they were.
Don't own other people.
I'm sorry, what?
I said empathy. If you don't want to be owned, don't own other people.
Yeah.
That's like kind of the root of just about every precept.
It's not like people back then didn't have empathy. So I wouldn't be surprised if we could travel back in time in a machine, right, to visit some household that had slaves and find those slaves being treated well because those people had empathy too. What they did not have is an understanding of the need for equal rights for people.
Well, at the same token,
they did not
certain
have
degrees
that.
of empathy are taught, so therefore, a child
Sure.
is raised in a certain household, whether he's taught or he or she's taught their entire time one certain, value, they're bound to just assume that value to be authoritatively true.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I forgot what I was going to say about this. No, there's the argument of, are good things good because God does them, or does God do things because they are good? And a lot of people will argue that things are good because God does them. And because of that, they try to find the benevolence behind certain heinous institutions that you find in the Bible. Slavery, the sex trade, pillaging people, and it's this really, really heinous way of trying to justify something. But that's why they do that. Regardless of whether it's good or not, they try to find some sliver of benevolence or try to use some sort of equivocation in order to justify the slavery. But I feel that passage sort of demolishes any argument that they could have ever made or will make.
Yeah, it's a bit two-faced of them to try to do that because they're arguing that things God does are good by definition. But they know that's not enough, and so then they look around for excuses to try to say these things are actually good by, when you analyze them. That shouldn't be necessary if they really believe that because God did it is the only justification needed to say that it was good.
Yeah, that also destroys subjective morality, because then good and bad are just completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
And if God raped a baby, then that would be good.
Yeah. Joe?
Even though,
have anything to chime in?
That is
this
a
one?
quandary I love to explore and to explain to people, that if God sets morals, then just anything he wants to do is suddenly moral. And we can read the Bible about how he did terribly depraved, horrible things, killing lots of people for no good reasons. If that's morality, then the rest of the Bible has to be consumed with an attempt to try to reverse that. And I think Jesus was a very revolutionary part of the Bible. One reason was because that whole book is filled with nothing but people doing things without empathy. And so when Jesus came along and tried to introduce that, along with some rather sadistic ideas as well, it is a shock to the reader. And I think a lot of modern Christians look at that and say, Jesus came to fix the Bible, not just the way people are. But you could read the New Testament, and there is that portion towards the end of the book where finally there's some empathy introduced to that religion. And I find it just amazing, though, that, it's understandable that empathy would come later after self-serving attitudes that are evolutionarily necessary for survival would slowly taper off as we become more evolved socially and be replaced by empathy and a more organized sense of empathy. But religion keeps that Bible around, and other books like it, which continue to hold on to the primitive ideas that don't involve empathy. And that can be a real drag on social evolution with some groups and some locations to this day.
Yeah, I I hope nobody would take this seriously and try it, but I think a much more compelling and rational religion could be formed out of taking the Bible and changing the premise from, oh, if the Bible is the story of God trying to make people be good, and flip that around and say, the Bible is the story of people trying to make God good.
Yes.
That makes a lot more sense. If there were congregations meeting, imagining there's this big entity in the sky that needs to be taught the difference between right and wrong, and our job down here is to teach him that, a lot of the Bible would make a lot more sense.
Yeah. On that slavery note, I constantly hear when Matt's arguing, people will try to flip it back on him. Well, what does evolution say about slavery, or some retarded straw man like that? I think that it actually does kind of nullify slavery, because one of the pillars of natural selection, is safety in numbers. Species try to bond together to preserve themselves. So owning each other and treating each other, terribly is not going to get you very far.
Yeah, I wouldn't try to latch on to evolution as a source of moral guidance, particularly, because evolution is not about that. Evolution is a fact, right? And it establishes, an understanding, describes what's actually going on. That doesn't mean that we should behave in certain ways because of what evolution does. The reason why we need equal rights for human beings is because we've tried it the other way, and look at what those societies were like.
Yeah, they were very
it's not really. I wouldn't really go to evolution to try to justify that.
Well,
a lot of horrific things happen within the bounds of evolution, right? I mean, so
Do what?
a lot of horrific things happen within the bounds of evolution.
Yeah, natural selection is fully tyrannical.
Yeah. We don't want to be living as if. I mean, that's that's libertarianism. All right.
Okay.
So, anything else, Thaddeus?
Nope, that'll be it. Thank you very much.
Okay. And I'm sorry. That was a personal comment on libertarianism. The ACA is not politically biased.
I didn't think it was.
Just me. Okay. Thanks for your call.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Everybody wants there to be some clear, easy thing to point at and say, that there, if we study that, then we'll understand how we should behave. But the real world is complicated, and relationships between human beings are complicated, and there is such a thing as they're telling me there's more calls up. There is such a thing as tragedy, situations where there's no good answer to certain kinds of situations. So I think the quest for a perfect set of moral guidance, of moral rules, is probably a mistake. But constant striving is not a mistake.
There you go.
My opinion. We have Troy on the line. Troy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, Troy.
There's just a little bit of a delay. How's my audio?
We hear you just fine, Troy.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was, I got a pretty quick question here. Actually, in my interactions, with other Christians, sometimes it turns into an argument before I can actually get it out. So, my question is, I was just wondering if maybe there was a quick example or a definition that between objective and subjective morality.
Objective and subject. Well, I think what people usually mean when they're talking about that difference is subjective morality is when people decide what's right and wrong based on their own personal situations and preferences, and objective morality would be some set of external rules or obvious facts that would provide the guidance to behavior.
So
it's either biased, kind of biased or unbiased is a way to look at it.
Right.
I don't think that you personally, and we have different hosts on the show and we think different things, but personally, I don't think there's such a thing as objective morality as a pre-packaged system of instructions that's out there somewhere for us to find and look at. I think what there is are objective facts, and then we need to process those into an understanding of what are functionally good ways to behave and effective ways to behave in the long term, and do that without allowing our own bias to interfere too much.
So
that's how I
agree
see
that it definitely varies from time to time and culture to culture. Huh?
Well, absolutely. People's moral rules vary from time to time and culture to culture.
They change and evolve.
That has for sure happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, like I said, that was just a quick. Quick question there, but yeah. But I just wanted to plug the Gateway to Reason. That was I was there for a couple days, and stayed at an awesome hotel, but it was pretty close by, and so I was there to see most of the 2 days, and got to see Matt and talked with David Fitzgerald for a little while, and boy, it was a full house, man. It was packed with a bunch of vendors, and yeah, it was awesome.
Cool. Well, great. Thanks. Is that all you got, Troy?
That's probably going to wrap up my call.
Okay. Thanks very much. Where were you calling from, by the way?
All right, cool. Thanks.
Troy, where were you calling from?
Oh, I'm calling from Jefferson City, Missouri.
Okay.
About 2 hours away from where that was going on.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much.
All right. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Morality thing.
You know, there's an objective reality, regardless of what we believe, but objective morality, I think, is a whole different ballgame. Because when we think about morality, it's really our opinions, whether we're taught them or we develop them along the way. And objective would mean and refer to things that are outside or above or transcending our individual thoughts, but instead being a more collective idea that everybody shares. But when it comes to morality, we don't all share the same moral attitude about any issue, not 100% of all humans.
Right, and you can't, and because morality, the reality did not provide us with, naturally occurring books of instructions. There's no way to get people out of the equation of doing the study of reality to try to figure out effective rules of behavior. And that's okay. I mean, that's like science in a sense, right? We're really hearing a lot of stuff now over our microphones. We should take our call? Okay. We have Doug on the line.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Hi, Doug.
Jeff isn't so loud.
Sorry about that. Where are you calling from, Doug? You're on.
Am I almost up?
You're on.
We hear you.
It's you, Doug. Doug, it's you.
Yeah, this is Doug.
Hi. Where are you calling from?
Jeff? Hi. Is that Jeff? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Doug.
Sorry about that. Okay, cool. Where are you calling from, Doug? Cuernavaca, Mexico.
You need to turn down the volume on your show.
I know.
You need it.
I'm talking to you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're getting feedback from your end.
Okay. I'll turn the sound off or what?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes, we hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Let me find the sound.
We used to have a box. We just mute somebody real fast, but
And are you still there, Doug?
I'm talking to you. Can you hear me?
they must have done that in there.
I think we're going to have to lose this call. This is not working. Sorry, Doug.
Yeah, when you call, you should turn down the volume of everything in your room, really. Right?
Yeah, it sounded like he was listening to the show on speakers and it was getting through the mic, and then it goes round and round and round, and that's hilarious, but hard to communicate. So we were talking about objective morality. I mean, just the word objective or subjective. I don't think it's that simple, and I think a lot of people try to resolve that by saying, well, the things we're looking at from which we draw our conclusions of what kind of behavior is workable and what kind isn't, those are objective facts. Therefore, it's objective morality. I guess I can see that, but I'm always concerned that that's confusing the issue, right? I guess it's fair in science when you say, we have a objective understanding of how this thing works because our conclusion is drawn from that. But I think with morality, there's too much. There's way more interpretation of what conclusions to draw from observable results of people interacting different ways. So it's tricky. We have Paul on the line.
Hey, how y'all doing today?
We're good, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing very good, very good. I'm more nervous than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs, but I'm doing good.
Where are you calling from, Paul?
I'm Live Oak, Florida.
Hi. How's things in Florida right now?
Wet and rainy.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Unless you want that.
My crops, I mind, but my crops don't mind.
Uh-huh.
So.
Okay.
But the reason I was calling is the concept of faith.
Uh-huh.
Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Ross say it best of all. Faith is the excuse you give yourself for believing something without evidence. I was just in an argument with a close relative concerning faith, and they said it means trust or confidence. And I also wonder if the atheists take on it.
You want to go on this one?
They should finish the sentence. Trust or confidence without evidence of the claim or any objective reasoning, but that faith and confidence in a God has to be blind faith when you think about it, because he doesn't show up, can't see him, can't verify what's being told to you by the preacher person, and really you end up having to take that preacher's word on faith. When they say have faith in God, what they really should say is have faith in me as I tell you about God. So at that point, yeah, we're having to be told to have faith in people, and then they turn around and say it's not a human-centered idea. Man's ways are corrupt. You should do God's ways. But we only hear from humans on that.
Yeah, well, they were talking about how the word faith is not synonymous with religiosity.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but these are religious people telling you that.
Yes.
You know what you can do? This is what I did years and years and years ago when this kind of issue would come up. I looked in the darn dictionary, and you know what? There are bunches of different definitions of the word faith. And usually what I find is going on when religious people try to justify their faith in supernatural things, is that really they're playing two different definitions, right? I mean, when you go to sit in a chair and you presume that it's not going to collapse under your weight, that falls under one particular definition of the word faith. But that kind of faith is based on years and years of experience and thousands and thousands and thousands of chairs you have sat in that didn't collapse, right? That's why you can have that kind of unquestioning assumption, even though that assumption can still be wrong, right? Because chair number 1,005,782 might be the one that breaks.
Yeah.
But Christians, I mean, theists in general, will say, oh, that's all that faith means. But then when you see them applying something they call faith to their religion, they don't mean anything like that. They mean believing unquestionably in things for which there is no evidence whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I use the is a reasonable expectation based on past experience. I don't have faith that the sun's going to rise tomorrow. I have a reasonable confidence that it will rise tomorrow because I've seen it rise.
Right, and that's why
almost 50 years.
That's why a lot of atheists, even though we're doing things like that, which could be described under certain definitions of the word faith, we. In my case, I like to try to avoid the word faith because there are so many definitions that if I say that, that doesn't explain anything, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Because I'll say if I call believing the sun's going to come up tomorrow faith, immediately the believer is going to latch onto that and try to play word games with it to justify what they're calling faith.
They're used to a kind of faith that really doesn't operate upon things we can examine. With the sun coming up, we can examine that better than many, many other things. But the fact that it's unavoidable, and a person would be crazy to say, my eyes work fine, but that isn't a bright star out there. But that's objective and observable. But a lot of religious people are absolutely steeped with the idea that you don't need evidence because they're being asked to believe in something without anything to verify. You can't even talk to the person who came up with these ideas, the Ten Commandments and all these creations. You can't question that person. You have to question someone else. And a lot of people, that's not enough for them.
And when they say that faith is just trust should be earned, right? Anybody who asks you to have unquestioning trust in spite of a complete lack of evidence, that person is trying to manipulate you.
If they had to say that from the pulpit, trust me, and literally point at themselves, it wouldn't be as powerful a message if they could just point to the crucifix or some other tangible symbol, and just a symbol, of course, of a God they can't find.
Yeah.
If they had a real God, would it ever be about the preacher? Would there be televangelists? Would there be a pulpit for a person to go up there and get all the attention of the congregation for a while, instead of a show with the real star of the show actually showing up? When I was a kid, as a Christian, I said, this is God's house. We never see him. He doesn't come around. Well, does he need a ride?
I was asked, how is hell so bad when the same religious nuts that tell me that I'm going to go there will not be there themselves?
Yeah, well, it's the other parts of the description that make that not a good deal. I'm not going to trade having my flesh roasted off my body to just for never having to hear Pat Robertson ever again. That's not enough.
I think if you were to die and go to a place and hear Pat Robertson for the rest of eternity, that would be hell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's people that like him.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for your call, Paul.
Thank you. You take care.
You too, down there in Florida.
All right, you too. Have a good one. Thank you.
Well, what were we talking about before?
Moles.
We got into, it looks like we have another call being lined up, but just in case, it's Derek. Derek, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
This is awesome.
How you doing, Jeff?
Thanks all you folks for all your calls, because this would have been a hard show to do if you folks were not rising to the challenge and going through Skype to reach us. So thank you. What do you got for us, Derek?
Okay, so this is what's going on. I've been an atheist since I was 14 years old. Now I'm 44.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my, I got in touch on Facebook with some old friends that I haven't seen, from school from 20, 30 years ago.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You know how it is, how life changed to many people, and I discovered some of them, that are atheists. but many of them they are Christians, and some of them they are way too deep into religion. And thanks to your show, I've been watching your show, since 2013. I discovered it by accident on YouTube, and then I started watching the show, the streaming like today on Sundays, and I discovered how to. I learned how to, argue with Christians and how to beat, their fallacies and their arguments. Thanks to you, to your show. Now, the question, this is not much as a question, but it's this like something that's worrying me about, and I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about politics. I'm not going to mention any political parties or anything. I respect that about your show, but how about, for example, like I've been noticing, like in the last 10 years, conservatives, they've been, like grabbing, this Christian, like getting way too in deep into, mixing religion with the politics, and they're using that as a mechanism to, attract, voters from that part, and they try to make another part, liberals look, that they are known as, true Christians for those that they follow the religion. You understand? And right now, it's kind of like infiltration. It sounds like a tin hat type of talking, and I'm not into, conspiracies or anything like that. But I mean, worrisome, because you see what's going on in some schools that they try to infiltrate, what's the name, creationism, in science class, and which is a huge problem in my opinion. And so many types of, laws that they try to put based on religion. And recently, with this gay marriage, they went nuts, these people. And I've been having a field day with these people, arguing with them and trying to explain to them that they cannot, these are a secular nation, and whatever they want the government to apply, that comes from religion, it doesn't apply. Well, they don't understand that. They don't understand. So what's your opinion about that? Either
Wow. Yeah, I'm quite concerned at what I see happening in the culture, where in order to whoop their base into a enthusiastic frenzy, they need to have examples of things that they can claim are oppression. And so what I see happening is that the leaders of that base are pushing to encourage more and more and more extreme behavior, so that when they are opposed by the culture, then they can claim oppression, and then they have the enthusiasm from their base. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we would not have all these preachers going around claiming that Christianity is being oppressed in this country if they weren't trying to violate anti-discrimination laws on the basis of their religion, if they weren't, they can just make the list of all the things you've seen them up to lately that they're claiming they get to do because of. There's Christian anti-vaxxers, right? And they're claiming oppression because they don't get to not vaccinate their children. It seems, again, I agree with you. I don't think it's a conscious conspiracy, but I think the dynamic of the situation is that there's all too many right-wing Christians claiming religious exemptions from certain moral behavioral rules and laws, so that they can turn around and claim oppression. There. It took me way too long to answer that. Do you have a further comment?
Yeah, that reminds me of Christian Science and other denominations which want to have exemptions from laws that are otherwise mutually applicable to all of us, laws which would penalize them for neglecting medical care for their children if they need it. And this is played out in the courts many, many times. And it shows me, first of all, that Christianity, like most religions, will eventually take both sides of every important social issue in a very evolutionary way to survive. In other words, at the end of the day, whichever issue wins, they've got somebody there from day one and technically can walk away as the victors, even if they had the other side covered too. And so with things like Christian Science and the idea that God can save someone from a sickness when there's a hospital down the road instead, and that people need to have an exemption so they don't go to jail for avoiding that medical technology, obviously it is become a problem because a lot of children have died, a lot of sick adults as well, but this has a cumulative result of a morality that is flexible, first of all, and that they want special rights because of religion. To me, that means their religion is a weakness in their life. But also, when we're talking about the health and welfare of a child who is sick, it gets into the zone of a very tangible danger. And like I said, some denominations embrace that, some don't. Same thing with gay marriage. Some embrace it, some don't. And to me, that just doesn't show there's a lot of consistency within religion if they can't decide on these very important issues, one side or the other.
Right.
Same thing with slavery. For a long time, it was supported by churches, and we now know better.
So, does that answer your question, Derek?
Yeah, and one more thing before I go.
Yeah.
One thing that's funny about, for example, conservative Christians, and it's just like, I don't know how they can call themselves Christians because, in one point, I don't believe in anything about the Bible. I don't care about anything the Bible has to say, but there's a lot of beautiful things about the message, of Jesus. And these people, everything they try to promote, is contrary to, like Jesus, try to, how I can say, the message of, caring for others and, what he thinks about the rich people and so on. And sometimes I see Christians, criticizing all atheists that we are so Darwinian and everything, but the same. But actually, I see them acting more like the Darwinians because these conservative Christians that I argue with, they're always, hammering, the poor people are, takers, and nobody should have, like social services or anything like that.
Yeah.
So who's the real Darwinian?
I can't follow you in this idea that there's a core of Christianity that's just wonderful and to criticize Christians for not being like that. If you look at history, there's no evidence I can see that Christianity is on the whole more good than bad. So I think reacting to a extreme right-wing fundamentalist Christian by saying you're not acting the way Jesus would is giving too much credit to the whole Christian belief structure in the first place. I don't care if they're being like Jesus. I don't care if they call themselves Christians. I care what they actually do.
Yeah. Thanks for clearing that for me. So thanks for everything. And listen, it was a pleasure to see you back in the show.
You're welcome. And also, Derek, congratulations on you said you were an atheist since 14 and you're 44 now. That makes this your 30-year anniversary as an atheist. And I think you get some kind of silver cutlery or something. Isn't that what it is? What's 30 years in marriages? Is that silver? Anniversary.
I'm gonna tell you, this is the best marriage I ever had.
I think we should have that in atheism, where you just celebrate these major points.
Big roast baby for dinner.
Yeah, for 20 years is a cross and a bottle of we. Okay, thank you very much for your call, Derek. Take care.
Okay, have a good one, guys. Take care.
And we will go to our last call, Martin. Martin, can you hear me? Have we still got Martin? Okay, they're figuring that out. Yeah, sure. That we could come up with atheism anniversary. How many years have you been an atheist?
Since roughly when I was in 4th, 5th grade. It's kind of a gray area because it was a slow transition. But when I was in Catholic school, I figured it out. But I still had a few years left to go to finish Catholic school.
Yeah.
So I had to fake it. I was an atheist on my knees praying to God.
I must be somewhere around my third year too, but I'm not going to do the math right now. Let's try Martin again. Hey Martin, you there? Hi.
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Where are you calling
nice.
from?
Hello.
Where are you calling from, Martin?
From Sweden.
Sweden. Martin from
Yes.
Sweden. How is everything in Sweden these days?
It's great. It's cold. No summer.
Okay.
But I'm actually envious of you guys because you guys have a lot of Christians to debate. Here in Sweden, we have almost none.
Oh, yeah. It's not always as much fun as it seems like
I
to
was just
debate
asking,
them.
is that really a good thing? Yeah, it's fun to
It
debate.
seems fun at least. I look for them, but I can only find like a deist at most, but
Yeah.
they're very marginalized.
Yeah.
But anyways, I've been talking to one. We have dinners and it's quite nice. But I asked him for his best argument, and he says that its DNA cannot replicate. So the first DNA had to come from something supernatural. And I point out that that's kind of like an argument for ignorance fallacy, even though like maybe there is an answer, but I didn't know an answer at the time at least. And then he points out that everything it can be made into an argument from ignorance. That like the table I see in front of me, I only see it. How can I really know that I see a table or that I feel a table?
Oh, that's just solipsism, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
an appeal to ignorance.
I point out that he cannot know.
You should also say
he
that
makes up an answer when we don't know, and he says I do the same thing because we cannot know there's a table.
Yeah, but then we're talking about statistical likelihood, right? I mean, a thing that you don't know because of some highfalutin philosophical trickery is not the same as a thing you don't know because there clearly is going to be some physical evidence out there one way or the other, and you just don't have it. Those are different kinds of situations. And anyway, I agree with the guy that I fully admit I cannot prove solipsism isn't true, but it makes no sense to live your life on the assumption that it is true. If you assume solipsism is true, there's no point to anything. And
no, but
maybe there isn't, but since we're sitting here arguing about it, we've already dispensed with solipsism.
Yeah, but the point is he's saying that I'm also making an argument from ignorance fallacy.
Yeah.
Saying there is a table.
And my response would be those are two different levels of two different types of ignorance, two different levels of ignorance, and one of them you've already dispensed with because you're having the discussion.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's kind of my answer also. That's a different kind of ignorance.
By the way, we've
we've
heard from the...
Nice to see you back, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. I'm not going to be back on the show on a regular basis. I'm having a great time doing the Nonprofits audio podcast, and I'm enjoying that, and it's just too much to be on both shows at the same time. I don't know how Russell pulls it off. He must not have a life. But we'll see. I'm sure I'll do more of other kinds of things in the future too.
Yeah, keep up the good work. And me and my girlfriend are watching you guys every night almost on YouTube and live. So it's the best.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your call, Martin. I just want a quick message for Derek. We've heard from the control room that the 30-year anniversary is Pearl. So you're due some sort of Pearl atheist paraphernalia. All right. We're down to the last few minutes of the show. You have anything else you want to talk about?
Could I give a plug to the group that I work with?
Totally plug your group.
AtheistHelpingTheHomeless.com. It's a group of atheists and humanists and others who help the homeless in a couple of cities, not just Austin, but also Houston and San Antonio and East Texas now. And that's great because there are still a lot of folks who don't have a place to live. And all this group does a monthly giveaway of free items, mostly toiletries and not money and cigarettes, things like that. No, giving them things that they can use to help themselves, that last a while, and some food as well. And this is something that's been going on since 2009, and it's very successful. So atheisthelpingthehomeless.com. And I also wanted to grab this right quick if I could.
Certainly. That's your latest book?
Yeah.
Awesome. And where can people get that again? On Amazon?
Amazon.com.
The title is Tales from the Trenches of the Freethought Movement, or Atheist Activist is the title. Subtitle is. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for watching the show. Thank you to the folks out in the studio audience, who I'm waving to, and who are paying no attention to us. Thank you. I don't know, I don't think that the show has permanently, definitely moved to this location. I believe it's going to be maybe back and forth for a while, but this seemed to be a pretty good experiment and a big success. So thanks a lot for all of your support over the years, folks. Again, we're going to be meeting after the show at the Thunderbird Cafe, 1401 West Koenig Lane. So if you're in the Austin area, we'd love to see you there. Take care.